Welcome back, one and all. So, you may have seen one or two of the videos that I kind of binge recorded yesterday for me. So, for the guy recording this video footage to use in this video, today is Sunday, July 20th, 2025. So, if you in any way, shape, or form have watched any of my content through the recording order modern era playlist of the Godzilla Brawler channel, you should know vaguely which videos I am referring to, which videos I have recorded in the past 24 hours for me. And the reason for that is that it rained last night, and usually I cut the grass on Sunday afternoons / Sunday mornings, but considering the inclement weather, it's not exactly safe for me to ride the ride mower when the grass is as wet as it is. I did fill up my gas tank for the ride mower recently, but that's beside the point. If you enjoy this video in any way, shape, or form, please consult the following road signs, as they will give you guidance on any of the number of ways which you can show support for the Godzilla Brawler YouTube channel. And of course, my layout is completely and utterly screwed up completely. Okay, it should be fixed now. So yeah, today I wish to go over some old writing that I had done as a child, a youth as it were.
Did you say utes?
Yeah, 2 utes.
What is a ute?
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor. 2 youths.
And the writings in question have to deal with one of the Godzilla Unleashed OC original creation monsters,
Obsidius?
According to the file modified date listed within my Windows environment computer laptop, the story that I wish to go over in brief in this video was last modified on September 2nd, 2010 at 7:06 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have absolutely no idea what is in this story. I have not proofread it at all. This is entirely off the dome. In fact, I will not be surprised if my layout for reading LibreOffice document files, of which Microsoft Works word processor WPS file types belong, I won't be surprised if that layout is screwed up, so please hold while I double check.
I'm Glenn Quagmire, and this is B.
Okay, it looks like that layout is pretty decent, but before we go over the actual story / writing, remember that if we trust the date that my computer is giving me for the file, 2010, I would have been 13 years old. But it is worth noting that Godzilla Unleashed, both the PlayStation 2 and Wii versions, released in calendar year 2007, and I would have been 10 years old approximately when Godzilla Unleashed came out. So the fact that the file modification date tracks this file as last having been modified 3 years later is probably moderately correct, because I guarantee I did not just immediately turn on Godzilla Unleashed, go directly to unlocking Obsidius, and then immediately shoot upstairs to the guest bedroom computer to write a story about Godzilla versus Obsidius. But I am not entirely certain as to whether the exact last modified date that I just recited is the exact date on which I wrote the original story. All this really tells me is that, as should be unsurprising, the Obsidius giant rock magma monster original creation character monster from Godzilla Unleashed must have been more interesting to me as a young child than the other OC. I feel like as I have matured and grown older, because as of the time of recording this video, I am 28 years old, I feel like I have grown to appreciate Crystalak more, but the fact that I decided to sit down and write a pseudo fan fiction regarding Godzilla squaring off specifically with Obsidius and not Crystalak is rather unsurprising. After all, Obsidius is the only of the two that, at the time of recording this video, is slated for inclusion in the Godzilla Save the Earth Melee project. And that mod is no small feat of fan engineering, and Obsidius and Crystalak notoriously got a lot of blowback from all sorts of Godzilla fans around the time of Godzilla Unleashed's initial release, because many people, I say rather unreasonably, wanted even more Toho licensed original monsters, and I don't think Atari and Pipeworks underneath them necessarily had the funds with which to secure many more monsters, and I feel like Obsidius and Crystalak were kind of Atari's answer to that conundrum. Like, well, the fans want more monsters. How in the hell are we gonna get any more monsters into this game without shelling out buku dinero? Oh, well, we could just design a bunch of original monsters and throw them in the game with a sort of ballot roster kind of fan interaction thing. Remember, in 2007, the internet was not exactly as well formed, if you can deign to call it such a thing, as it is now. And remember, this was a pre-Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U world. We did not have the Smash ballot yet. Kind of just goes to prove that it's very hard to pull off any original ideas anymore. Now, in the case of the Super Smash Bros. Ballot, it resulted in, well, I guess 2 characters as well. Namely, Bayonetta in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, which led to the total inexorable collapse of the Super Smash Bros. For Wii U competitive scene. And, as we learned relatively later, once I personally had stopped really playing the Super Smash Bros. Games in earnest, apparently Sora from the Kingdom Hearts franchise by Square Enix technically won the Smash ballot all those years ago, but due to the legal nightmares that inclusion of Sora kind of threatened Masahiro Sakurai and Sora Limited with, they just decided to tell a little white lie and tell us that Bayonetta had won, which was not entirely false. She probably was pretty high up there, but technically Sora had won the ballot. If I don't recall correctly, I think Crystalak was basically the nepotism baby, and Pipeworks and Atari basically just unanimously decided on including Crystalak, but Obsidius was the fans' choice, the people's choice. I have rather vaguely covered some of the other monsters that were in the original monster kaiju poll alongside Obsidius, that Obsidius itself ended up beating in that poll, but this video I'm just going to cover this little story that I wrote apparently. So, it is a Golats. As per usual, I have blurred out the text of the document so that only I am capable of reading it, but I will obviously fill you guys in, the viewers, as I go through it. Godzilla versus Obsidius. And yes, that is blurred out and slightly cropped artwork, potentially even slightly edited artwork of the Godzilla 2000 poster. The name of the artist escapes me at this present moment, but I'll probably flash it up on the screen because it's some of the most goated artwork the Godzilla franchise has ever produced. Okay, this is already starting off interesting. It had been a quiet week in Tokyo, and Godzilla has not been seen in months. It is worth noting that this document is 5 total pages in length. Now, if you've watched any of the previous episodes of Writing Revisited, a lot of my older writings, particularly from this 2010 to 2013 era, basically were just a picture and a paragraph per individual page. So, saying it's 5 pages is not exactly as much of a statement as it may sound to an uninformed ear. Okay, so this is very interesting. Basically, the Global Defense Force, not the Earth Defense Force, which means that it is probably somewhere around around the release of Godzilla Unleashed that I wrote this, because I remember as a child not really understanding why in such as Godzilla Final Wars it's referred to as the Earth Defense Force.
At last, instead of killing each other, mankind had come together to combat the monsters. The Earth Defense Forces were born.
But in, say, for example, Godzilla Unleashed, it's called the Global Defense Force. There is a heavy inspiration, it seems, from the PlayStation 2/GameCube Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 game here, which may indicate that this was written closer to the release of Godzilla Unleashed. But anyway, the Global Defense Force is monitoring some sort of rogue comet, because there is what is known as the Fireball Comet Festival, which was, for some reason, always kept secret, which is kind of contradictory in regards to the fact that there is a festival. But much like the Black Comet festivities in Shadow the Hedgehog, the comet turns out to be no good, except in this case, it bursts into a rock monster in the form of Obsidius, and it begins to orbit the Earth. Okay, so it doesn't immediately just crash down and start destroying things. Okay, on the next page we have a very, very, very poorly edited image, which I will not show just because it's not that good. And it's basically the 3D render of the Wii version of Godzilla Unleashed's Obsidius in what appears to be a crater in the middle of a flaming, destroyed city. I say that the image is poorly edited because you can tell I did not know how to remove all of the white space surrounding an object in an image at that time. That's part of the reason why I don't want to show it. Okay, so the comet was orbiting the Earth a second ago, but the first sentence says, the comet crashed down in Tokyo and the monster Obsidius emerged from the fire. And you can't see it, but Obsidius is misspelled. For some reason, I always spelled Obsidius as O-B-S-I-D-I-O-U-S. And there is no O in Obsidius. I might show that on the screen, I don't know. Okay, so Obsidius just starts spewing molten lava into Tokyo and turns it into a lava ocean. That's interesting because in the PlayStation 2 and Wii versions of Godzilla Unleashed, Seattle, Washington, United States gets swallowed in an ocean of molten lava, molten rock. And in Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash for the Nintendo DS, San Francisco, California, United States meets the same end, essentially.
Flashbacks, kudos all around.
Although Obsidius does not show up in Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash, which is a real shame because I would actually honestly like to see a Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash art style version of Obsidius. And AI art generation has not gotten good enough to the point where I can just make a relatively dirty, quick, and easy Unleashed Double Smash Obsidius for my own consumption. I find it interesting because my actual sentence structure is pretty elaborate, but the actual number of sentences per page is pretty pathetic. Because sentence 1, page 2 is basically just saying Obsidius awakes and starts destroying everything. He's awake! And sentence number 2 is basically, in summarization, basically just saying G-Force, which apparently must also exist in this universe, sends all of the helicopters, jet fighters, and other aerial combat vehicles to take on Obsidius, but, quote, nothing worked. Okay, then we have an image of the Godzilla 2000 promotional material, I think. I love that image. I used it in all sorts of stuff. Godzilla arises from the ocean and sees the destruction. He just wades through the buildings at the center of town and gets closer to Obsidius, who is, quote, at the center of the city. Obsidius just hawks Godzilla at Tokyo Tower, which angers Godzilla, and Godzilla unleashes his atomic breath directly at Obsidius's shoulder, which, quote, shatters, and lava-like fluids pour from his shoulder. So I guess Obsidius is bleeding from the shoulder.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
we have an image of 2004/Final Wars/Final Goji Godzilla strolling past a large flame. Godzilla rams into Obsidius, but Obsidius does not budge, so it effectively has no effect. Obsidius rips a chunk of asphalt out from underneath the lava-filled streets and rebuilds his arm with the material. Okay, that just kind of escalated out of nowhere.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Obsidius, quote, gave himself wings. If any artists watch this video and care to share what that might look like with the world, I would surely appreciate it, but Obsidius grew wings, basically. But Godzilla bites it and just yanks it off, which is pretty hardcore, I won't lie. Holy cow! Godzilla then begins to, quote, use it as a club to batter Obsidius. And he essentially beats him bloody with his own generated limb. I don't really know how to put that, because Godzilla beats Obsidius until he falls, and Obsidius oozes lava and molten rock in the process of falling. That's pretty hardcore. Godzilla eventually retreats from the city, and the ruins are filled with magma. Okay, so the battle with Obsidius and Godzilla ended rather anticlimactically because there is no further roughhousing between Godzilla and Obsidius, but as they are pumping the magma and lava out of the Tokyo City streets, an original character makes some remarks that are rather intriguing. I do not believe that this name is the name of the commander from Godzilla Unleashed, but here it says G-Force Commander Chikora Shimizu, and he chuckles to himself, remarking, "Godzilla's blood. We now have what we need to build our own Godzilla living. We'll destroy that monster once and for all." And immediately after that it says "the end," followed by 3 question marks, which tells me that this is meant to be a cliffhanger of some sort. I find that very odd. Obsidius fighting Godzilla does not really feel like the kind of thing that would have a cliffhanger attached to it at the end. Also, Commander Takora, I don't believe that was the name of the commander from Godzilla Unleashed. Let me look that up. No, that does not seem to be the name. In Godzilla Unleashed, there were a number of human characters which I may or may not do a dedicated video for in the future. It's been something that I have kind of wanted to sit down and record some video content for, but the commander in Godzilla Unleashed is referred to as Base Commander Tagaki, and he is really the only person in the human cast, limited as though it may be from Godzilla Unleashed, that could possibly have inspired Commander Takora. Maybe I just didn't know the commander's name in Godzilla Unleashed when I wrote that story. Regardless of that, I don't believe trying to clone Godzilla to kill Godzilla was a plot point in Godzilla Unleashed. Obviously, Dr. Shiragami essentially creates Biollante as part of the canon universe of Godzilla Unleashed for the Wii, but to my recollection, there is no clone of Godzilla subplot in any of the versions of Godzilla Unleashed, so that's very odd. What's even odder is that I do, according to my computer, have a story called Godzilla vs. Godzilla, which reading Godzilla vs. Obsidius might indicate was meant to be a follow-up to Godzilla vs. Obsidius, but according to my computer, Godzilla vs. Godzilla was last modified on August 13th of 2010 at approximately 9:20 a.m. So Godzilla vs. Godzilla predates Godzilla vs. Obsidius based on the available information that I have, so unless transferring the files from my parents' old computer to whatever computer stored the last modified date for these files, else was bizarre in some form. I don't know if I ever wrote a definitive follow-up to kind of finish the cliffhanger presented in what we just read. It's worth noting that August 13th of 2010 is the last and most recent date assigned to any of the files in that folder. So I don't know if this ever got concluded in anything. Overall, not really a whole lot, which is relatively interesting, but I just wanted to kind of focus in on the fact that the younger iteration of myself actually liked Obsidius enough to write a unique story that focused in so many words on him. I guess the question is, why did I seemingly arbitrarily decide to have Obsidius gain the ability to basically rip off its limbs and pull molten asphalt from the streets to rebuild its limbs, including, might I add, the ability to give itself wings? And that was not one of the abilities that Obsidius was given in, like I said, any of the versions of Godzilla Unleashed. Nor, for that matter, was that something that was given to Crystalak in any of the versions of Godzilla Unleashed. For that matter, the only original Godzilla Unleashed roster ballot kaiju that had wings was the lightning bug. But I don't even know if I was even aware of the existence of the concept of the lightning bug when I wrote this story. All very confusing if you ask me. Anyway, so that does it for today. I just wanted to go over some old writing. The fact that that one covered the sort of characters that it did really piqued my interest. So anyway, follow the guidance of any of these signs that I am about to dispose of.
Let's see, disposed, disposed, disposed.
I know most people do not watch these writing revisited videos. Most of this is just done for my own sake. I like going over a lot of the old writing content because Godzilla was a huge part of my childhood and my life more broadly in general. And I feel like sharing the kind of things that the young version of myself found interesting enough to write stories about is worthwhile. Anyway, support the channel in any of the ways that I have previously guided you towards. I hope you enjoyed the video and took it easy while you did so. And until next time, guys, I will catch you on the flip side.
Marie, is that my minerals?
The rocks! Hank?